Welcome back to the shop. This is going to be part number 2 of our 1994 Softail. We were originally just going to replace the starter, fork seals, and the rear brakes, and then when we pulled the primary cover off, we realized that clutch basket is toast. So we got a new clutch basket in, and actually an upgrade. So thanks for stopping by the shop. Let's get this clutch basket changed out, new starter in, and rear brake system installed. Welcome back to Butler Customs Motorcycle Shop. So if you remember by the last video, this basket is gone. Had a lot of slop, tons of debris just all through here from these gears running out. So this kit came with a new jack shaft, and you say, man, what in the world? That looks crazy. Well, the reason is it's an upgrade. And as you can see, the difference in teeth as opposed to here, a lot less teeth and a lot bigger teeth. So this is going to really grab when she goes. So let's get this jack shaft off, pull this clutch basket out. Now, I've already released the tension on the clutch cable. I just ran it all the way in, so there's no tension on this rod at all. Now usually, if I'm just pulling the basket off and leaving everything kind of the same, I would just take this circlip out and then this whole unit kind of comes out. But we've got to get this pressure plate off and take all the pads and stuff off. So this lock nut has to come off, and it's an 11/16, and I've got one that I kind of bent and angled, so we can just put on there, just break it off. And then you can unscrew both the lock nut and this Allen head threaded bolt as well. So you'll leave that in there, this plate in here. And the reason for that is that this pressure plate is under pressure. And there's a circlip right here that goes in these teeth that hold it on. You can see one of them's kind of chipped there. So this really shouldn't be right here. It should be over here somewhere. But, well, actually that might be the best place for it because there's no pressure on it. But anyway, to get this pressure plate off, you've got to push this in to relieve pressure on this clip. Do not ever try to take this clip off with this pressure plate under pressure. It will not work. You'll break half of these off, and which, I mean, yes, we have a new basket anyway, but this part right here we're going to reuse. So what you will need is a clutch compressor that sets on here, and this actually threads into here. Then this plate goes on over that. And then you have a couple of things here. You've got a washer that's got a flat side and a little indent, a little seating. So the seating goes out. Then you'll have a roller bearing washer. And I will grease that up a little bit, just some WD-40 to lube it up. And then you got another washer the same way, but this one goes inside up against those balls. Then you've got a handle, a little T-handle that just screws on there. And then the idea is, as you compress this plate, it takes the pressure off, and you don't have to do it much, but that's enough. So it takes the pressure off that clip, and now you can take that clip off. There we go. And pop that ring out. And now once this ring comes out, there will be a, I guess like a washer, but it's got a lip on it. And that kind of, your ring sets up in that lip and sets it flush. So you want to make sure that goes back the same way that you got it on. Now, all of this, the pressure plate and all, can come off. And you can actually leave the tool and circlip and washer and pressure plate and all still on this plate and just set it off to the side. Now, as you can see, we have access to our clutch pads. And our clutch pads surprisingly feel pretty good. Still have some grip to them. But we'll see as we keep taking pads out what it looks like. So you'll take you a couple of angled picks and get one on one side and one on the other. Just kind of wiggle. Maybe in here might be better to get them out. Wiggle and pull. Now we're going to be putting these back on. These actually look like they're in pretty good shape. I'm surprised. So I'm going to lay them face down in this box as they came out. That way when I go to put them back on, I'll just pick one up and put it back on. So face down. These are the metal plates here. Steel plates, and they're not burnt up. They look good. Lay that down. Lay that down. Lay that down. So far, so good. All right, and we've gotten all of our clutch plates out now. Okay, so we got all of our discs and plates out of the basket. Now, I've got to swap this hub out with this shell because the new shell just comes in a shell. And we've got to get this hub into here. So now we can take all this off. Now what I did, I went ahead and tightened this chain up so it's nice and tight, and that'll help us. Now we've got to lift the rear wheel up on the bike, and then I want to put this in the highest gear. Alright, there we go. And that will lock the hub in. Then I want to let the bike back down where the tire is on the lift pretty well. And now it helps if you have a friend, or you can zip tie the rear brake pedal down, but we don't have rear brakes on this. Not yet. So I got the tire down, and I think that's going to be enough pressure where we can zip this nut off. Now it is reverse thread, so we're going to actually tighten it to get it off. There we go. And now that is off. We'll set that actually in our box of disc pads. And now we're going to take this compensator nut off. The nut that came out of here was a 1 3/16. The nut for this is a big 1 1/2. It is standard reverse or standard thread, so we will loosen it. Okay. We will pull this off, and I will pull all this off together with it and lay it down. Now we'll take the tension off. Of our adjuster, and we'll take this bolt all the way, or nut all the way out. Keep some tension on the back there. All right, there's our nut and our washer. Okay, now this whole assembly is ready to just slide out just like so. Okay. Now there is a spacer behind this, and then this I'm just going to kind of set back on. There we go. Then I can take this out and I'm just going to slide that on there. I can go ahead and take our chain out of our hub. We will clean that chain up because there's a lot of debris in there. So as you can see, there's a whole ton of debris we're going to have to clean up and clean all this out with. So now our clutch hub is out. And there's a circlip here that we want to remove. And we want to take this over to a press. And we're going to press this hub out by pressing out. Once we remove the circlip, by pressing this right here out of this hub, or out of this shell. And then we will press it back into this new shell with this new bearing, put the washer and the circlip back on, and then this is ready to go back on the bike. But while we have this off, good time to go ahead and get this jack shaft off and the gear off, because we're going to replace the starter and the jack shaft. I just want to show you what this looks like when this hub actually comes out. It's a long shaft that goes into this bearing. There was not a washer here, just the circlip. That was actually the sealed bearing I was seeing. So now, with our new hub, we will grease this up and we will press this down into here and press this down. We will not press on this. We will press inside here. And I found that a 1-inch fits really well down in there, and actually to press it out, the 1-inch fits on there really well as well. A 1-inch socket. So I'm going to go clean this up, oil it, press it in, and you press it in until it seats, and then you should have enough room for the circlip to clip on. Okay, so we got the hub pressed back in and the circlip on, and everything went in nice and smooth. Now some tips about when you're going to press this in. Do not just take a 1-inch and throw in there and press the hub into this just setting flat on your shop press. You will want to support this bearing in here. If not, you could damage the roller balls. So I used a 1 7/16 that fit on the bearing really well, and it left me a hole big enough for the hub shaft to go down in. Then I used my 1-inch and press that hub in with this setting down like that. Went right in nice and smooth. You'll feel it bottom out, so go slow. Then check, make sure you can put your circlip in and it's in nice and good and smooth. Now this is ready to go back on. You can see we've got a good roll on it, and we'll oil it up with some assembly lube before we put it on. But before that, let's take this jack shaft off. But now we can get rid of this, this thing right here. That was rough. Now on the jack shaft here, it's just got a really long bolt, and usually the head on this is a little bit smaller, and there's a locking washer that locks so this don't come off. I'll just impact it off there. A couple of zaps. We will turn this. So this has a long shaft, and then this whole jack shaft assembly comes out. And I want to tell you, friend, that is not the same. Okay, so here's my dilemma. Here is the shaft that goes on the bike. Well, this is a one-piece shaft, not like what you would find normally. Normally you've got a jack shaft bolt, That's the little washer I was telling you about. It's got the little pin, but it's also got a little pin on the bottom that catches in this groove on this shaft. Then you've got a spring. You've got this spacer that rides in here that keeps the shaft from moving up and down. You've got a circlip inside there, and then you have this shaft that slides on over a coupling that then goes into your starter. That's the ideal. But when I pulled this off, it's just the one shaft. And the kit that's got the upgraded shell gears will not fit on here. You can't take this apart and screw that in there. It's all one piece. So luckily I had one of these laying around. That's why you always keep parts. So I can just take this off, slide that out, slide the new gear on, slide that back in. Now this is ready to go back in once we get our starter set up there and the new starter seal in. So I'm glad I kept my parts laying around, because that would have delayed me another week in ordering one of these, because it had this in it. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't like these. And the reason why is because this sits on that starter shaft, and there is nothing to support that. Where this, you set it on the shaft, and this goes in, and that supports your starter gear a whole lot better, in my opinion, than a one piece. So we will get the new gear on here like that. Well, let's go ahead and pull the starter off, and then we can get the new oil seal in the back and get the starter replaced, and then put the new jack shaft gear and all the assembly back on. Okay, so to take the oil tank out, there's quite a lot of stuff you actually have to undo. There's two bolts back here that hold it on. There's a bolt up here that runs to your coil, a nut you'll take off. Then there is this bracket here that bolts down here to this piece that's welded onto your frame. And there will be a nut that comes off, but you got to take this bracket off in order to have room to clear the two pegs on the tank. Then you've got your three lines, and take a picture and take note of where those lines come from. This is not a stock line. If it works, it works, I guess. And then you got another line, you got four lines. You got another line that's your drain, and it just pulled out with it intact on the tank. Now some tips. Go ahead and reach in through your tank and take the nut off for your starter, and take the whole wire off like this. So take that off while it's inside your oil tank, because if you try to snake this down through, this is so thick, it's really hard to do. So just go ahead and take it off while the tank's on. Then take this bracket off. Take this nut off first, off the tank. Take that bracket off, set it out of the way. Take your nut off on the other side that holds that side of the tank on. Take your two bolts off back here. That's on the back of this frame from the inside of the tank. Then, once you have all your lines disconnected, that tank just wiggles out this side. Of course, you'll need to get all your wires out of the tank. And then it comes out. Now, as you can see, we've got really good access to our starter. So we'll go ahead and just take this off here. And this just unplugs here. Big old honking thing, actually about the same size as a car starter. So the only thing holding this on is two Allen head, I think 1/4 inch there. We'll go ahead and pull those, and then we'll just slide the starter out. Now we've got room to get up in there. It wasn't even tight. I got a little bit of a crack out of it. Bolts should be the same length on both sides. And they will have a lock washer behind them as well. Now we can just slide this out. There's our old starter, and we'll compare it to the new starter. We won't need that spring anymore because we're going to change jack shafts out. We'll set that aside. Okay, so we drove the old starter shaft seal out and had to replace it anyway because this starter has got a regular shaft assembly, so it's a smaller hole. Put the new one back in from this side. And then when you get ready to put the starter back on with that new seal, on those smaller seals, you run the shaft assembly in over that seal surface, then put the starter on. You might have to reach over and adjust the jack shaft just to kind of get it to seat. So right now I'm going to get these wires out of the way that run up into the tank, and we're going to go ahead and put the tank back up in here and put it all together. Right back in here. Alright, I feel like I'm hanging up back here on something. It might be this drain hose. Oh yeah. Was that it? Yeah. Alright, my drain hose was up in the way. I'll get this nut and this bracket on this side. And I'll put my two bolts in here. I'll put the nut on just to hold it. I do wish they would have made the tanks a little easier to get on and off. All right, now we're ready to go back with the hub assembly. And what I like to do, I kind of just set it on just enough so it hangs. I'll take my right hand and I'll get this primary chain adjuster bolt up in the hole. Alright. Then I'll get my sprocket over here up against that. Then I'll wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. There we go. There we go. I'll put this on. It doesn't fall off. And I'll grab my gear, my sprocket, fit it on there. All right. Now I will clean the threads. Of both of these up. I will red Loctite them. Remember, this back here is reverse thread. This is standard. This isn't torqued too much, but this big dog right here, give it all you got. A lot of torque on that. You don't want this coming loose. You'll know it when it does. You'll hear it. All right, we'll put our plate up. Make sure we got our washer. Big fat washer on there. Run that in. It should all line up nice and neat. And then this will be reversed. Now when I get them kind of seated, we don't have our spring in here, our clutch spring, so this is just going to turn free. Unless, because I put the bike back in neutral. So we can raise the back tire back up, put it in 5th gear, let the back tire back down. this will hold. But I tell you, it will not hold enough to torque it. So what I'll do at this time is just hand tighten everything. I will probably go ahead and set the tension on this, and then we'll put our clutch packs back in and our disc, which turned out to be good. Our pressure plate back on. Then we can torque this down by putting this holder in here, and torque this down by putting the holder back up here or somewhere. Now remember, we'll go back and torque everything, but I just want them on there where they don't move when we're trying to put our pack back in. Now that we got things kind of halfway decent, we can actually test our starter shaft, which I already have before I put this on. But let's give it a crank and see what it does. Put some juice on the battery. Battery might be down a little bit. Alright, got our little portable jump box here. And let's see what we got. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. That battery's pretty old. We might want to go ahead and replace that battery, seeing as it is kind of pretty old. Now we'll go ahead and just put a little bit of tension on this chain, just because it'll help us along the way. All right, clutch packs. Okay, sorry about the audio here. My microphone died and I forgot to charge it. But I'm putting the clutch packs back in, and save on your old 5-quart jugs of oil. What I do is I cut the side out of one, put the top back on it, and then I'll put a couple quarts of oil that I'm going to use in the primary in it, and then I'll set my clutch packs inside it. Let them soak for a couple hours. If they're new clutch pads, you want to let them soak probably overnight. But don't use antifreeze jugs or anything that had water in it, okay? Use oil jugs. And now I'm just going to put the packs back in the order that they came out, starting with the friction pad, a disc, and then metal, friction, metal, friction, metal. Put you a pan, drip pan underneath your clutch basket, because there will be some oil drip, not much. And it's really not enough oil to save on, so it doesn't have to be a clean pan. It could be dirty. But you'll just go put them in one after the other in the order they came out. Now, as far as orientation, it really doesn't matter as long as they go in the right order. Then when you're through with that jug, you can open up the cap on the end of it and pour it out into your 1-quart jug, and then use it, or pour it back into whatever you took it out of and reuse that oil that the pads were soaking in. Now that all the pads are in, the pads will come up pretty much flush to the clutch hub. And then we'll put our pressure plate assembly back on, because we kept that tool on. And then we'll put that little kind of a washer with a lip on it on. And then we'll put our clip back in. And now the clip you can put back in really by hand. You just got to kind of hold it in one spot, and then it'll kind of clip up in there with just your hand, because all the pressure is off the pressure plate. Now that the clip's back in, make sure it's seated well before you start taking off the pressure plate tool, and just spin that off Take all your washers off, pull the bracket off, and then unscrew the little tool shaft. Now I have seen people use ratchet straps and blocks of wood and PVC pipe to get that pressure plate off, but really just buy the tool if you're going to do this a couple times. It's really handy to have, and it makes the job a whole lot easier. Now we'll take that inner clip out that holds that little plate on, because we've got to torque down our hub nut inside, and then torque down also our compensator nut. And now that pressure is on the clutch, then we can use our little tool here to lock the chain in and torque down our nuts. The compensator, or the hub nut, I believe is 80 foot-pounds, and the compensator nut I think it's like 120, 125, best I can remember. I went ahead and cleaned up the mating surface of the inner primary and the outer primary cover, and I put our James gasket up on here. I don't put any sealant on the James gaskets because it's got that nice red rubber coating on it. It's a really great design, and so I don't coat that with anything that you usually see me coat with. And I guess the heat got to this gasket and it's kind of cattywampus on us, so I'll clean these bolts up here. But before I put this cover on, we've got to go ahead and set our clutch and get it set. So we got all of our threads cleaned up on our primary cover. Let's go ahead and get our clutch seated and adjusted correctly. Now on this plate, they'll have a marking that says out on this model bike. There we go. Take our rod. It's got a beveled end that rod or shaft sets on, but let's go ahead and put our clip in first. That way this won't fall out on us. All right, and then I like to kind of move this away over here. Now we can put our adjuster screw in and make sure the nut's kind of out. Now what you want to do is turn this adjuster screw in until you feel it push up against that rod. So I'll just go ahead and take that lock nut off, and then that way we can visually see and feel a little bit better. So I'll run it in with my hands till I feel it seat, and now make sure the clutch cable is fully slack before you do this. Now according to the manual, it comes back counterclockwise once it seats, 1/2 turn to a 3/4 turn. So I'm going to put just my Allen tool in, I think it's a 3/16, and I'm going to go a half and then kind of split the difference between the half and the 3/4. And then I'll slide my nut back on, keeping my shaft where it's supposed to be. Then I'll take my 11/16 socket or wrench that I made at an angle, and then I'll hold that shaft and lock that nut down. And that's your adjustment. And then the rest of the adjustment is up at the cable. So just make sure that locks good, and then we'll go up to the cable. Okay, so we're here at the cable, and as you can see, there's a lot of slop because the cable is fully non-adjusted or all the way slack. And the manual says you want to pump the lever 2 or 3 times just to make sure that nothing's catching. Now when you set your free play, you don't set it at the lever, you set it actually at the back of this cable right here where it goes into the housing that holds the cable. So right there is where you'll set your free play, not up where the lever is. A lot of people set it at the lever, and that's not correct. I don't know if it really makes that much of a difference, but That's just what the manual says. So we'll keep the lever all the way against the grip, and then as I move the adjustment out, you'll see that lever move back out. So when I move the adjustment out till the lever comes out, but as you'll see, that's not where you check the free play. So you'll want to still take the cable and pull it, and look at all that slop. So that's what we want to get out of there. We don't want to set the free play here. So I'll pull again, still a little bit too much. The free play is, I believe, an 1/8 inch to something, but I always set it at an 1/8 inch, which is about the thickness of a nickel. And so I'll keep pushing the clutch in, feeling the free play, and then tightening or bringing out the adjuster in the cable. I'll keep doing this until the clutch feels good. It feels normal, like a normal Harley clutch, and I'll keep pulling the cable to see where my free play actually is. And then once I'm happy with that, then the clutch is done. Well, we got everything back together. My apologies again. The video kept working this time, but the audio mic died on me. I forgot to check, see if it was charged, and so I was just yapping away at you and you didn't hear anything I said. So here's what happened. We got the cover back on, 10 foot-pounds, 120 inch. And as far as pattern, it goes bottom, kind of middle, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then in the back. So that's kind of the pattern for that. That clutch hub nut, 80 foot-pounds, I believe, and 135 on the compensator. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what it was. And then we got our floorboard back on, and our pedal, since we marked it, we know exactly where that goes on. So I'm sorry that you missed all that. I did change the filter, oil filter. I did fill it with oil, the oil tank. I did change the transmission fluid, and we did throw a quart 20W50 in the primary. Plumber's taped the drain plug, cleaned it off, and everything's back together. I think we're ready for the first kind of fire up, see how it does. Now, I charged this battery overnight, and it just won't hold a charge. Not only will it not hold a charge, but it doesn't take a load too well either. If you put it on the load tester, it tests weak, but you know, these old Evos, they need a good crank on them. So I think we're going to replace this battery. We'll try to start it. We'll probably have to get the jumper box out, but let's give it a shot. Give it a choke. Yep, that battery. All right. Got our little jumper box here, man. I love this thing. I keep it in my saddlebag. It's a Gooloo, Gooloo, jumper starter power bank. It also has got like a USB. It's got an iPhone charger on it. It's pretty cool. All right, we'll throw this on. Make sure we got a green light, and we should be good. Chokes on. All right, that's a success. I did throw some new plugs in there as well. And I noticed he's got a heat shield that is, the bracket's not tight on it. Oh, the bracket's broke on it. So it's kind of rattling. Might replace that. Replace that for him, because that'll be annoying. But I don't see any leaks at all, and everything looks to be good. Now it does need a top end rebuild. You know, you saw that earlier at part 1, but everything's together. Clutch felt great, went into gear good, popped it back out in neutral. And what I want to do is start on these brakes, this rear brake, and then we'll be done. So for the rear brakes, he said it has nothing at all, but it doesn't leak any fluid. You fill it up, it doesn't leak anything. So it's been sitting in the shop before I got on the lift for a while. It didn't leak a thing. So what I decided to do is probably this plunger is not pushing or building pressure to push the brake fluid through. So I think that's going to be our problem. So I want to start here. We'll break this cap off, and before you break the cap off of brake fluid, guys, I'm telling you, brake reservoirs need to be clean, clean, clean. And you need to use the recommended DOT fluid that it says. If it's a 4 or 5 or 3, you need to use it. Do not mix the two or it will gel up and you'll have to replace everything. That one undone. We will go ahead and just take these off to get them out of the way. Actually, let me turn the key on and see if we got enough pressure to even turn the brake light on. And we do not. So that's what I thought. There's no pressure being built up to even turn the brake light on. Assuming that the brake light works. Guess I should have did this before we started the bike up. Yuck. Yowzers. All right, let's see what we got here. Oh, well, it's dry. Okay, then it must be leaking somewhere. All right, it's DOT5. So it's got to be leaking. He told me it wasn't. Well, he had just bought it. And boy, that always throws me off. This DOT5 is like purple. So I just want to compress it and see. Okay, I am getting air bubbles, which tells me the plunger is plunging. And I want to see where she leaks from, if we're losing fluid. Now I can hook the vacuum up to the brake bleeder, but as long as you're getting bubbles coming up, it's bleeding itself. It's a self-bleeding system. It just takes a little bit longer, but as long as you got a bunch of bubbles coming up, just keep doing your thing. Now, of course, you will break the bleeder valves in case there's just some air trapped in the back there. Unless the brakes just get really stiff and good on you, you don't need to. But that's rare. But it's bubbling pretty good. I don't know, can you even see that? Yeah, you can see them bubbles. That purple brake fluid looks like grape punch. It's kind of weird. Okay, there's our brake line. It looks dry. All right, still getting air bubbles. But the plunger, I believe, is just gone. I believe it's just gone. Still no leaks anywhere at all. The line is dry. The brake caliper is dry. I did pick up a brake caliper rebuild kit just in case it was that as well. All right, well, I don't think we're getting anywhere here. I was hoping to see a leak somewhere, maybe a small pinhole in the line. It is the braided line. Sometimes those get a leak in the lines. So I'm going to go ahead and put the lid back on this one. And then we'll start taking this whole master cylinder off. And I'm just putting the lid back on so we don't just make an absolute mess. And when we break the line, because we just put fluid in it. There should be a little bit of a mess, but hopefully not much. All right, looks like while this is mounted, let's go ahead and break off. I really don't want to mess with this switch because they're just finicky, but let's see if I can get this off without removing the crash bar. 9/16. There we go. And it's going to be tight, but I think we can get it out. And there goes our fluid. Maybe if I loosen up these mounting brackets, I can move it up a little bit. Hey, that'd be smart, wouldn't it? Now we're thinking. Now we should be able to, yeah, there we go. Now we can get a gun on it. I don't know about where you're at, but it's been a lot cooler here this last week in the shop. That is nice. There we go. I'm going to take this nut, this bolt, all the way out, because we will be replacing. Now, I want to see if it's actually squirting. I'm putting my bolt back in here just to hold it. Let's look here and see if it squirts. Yeah, it does. Kind of squishy squirting, but it does squirt. I'll leave actually that bolt in while I take this other one out. Alrighty, and then I've got a little cotter pin for the arm. Just a little pin that slides through, and then it's got a little cotter pin that you can usually, the cotter pin's so thin, you can usually just take your fingers and work them out. There we go. It's just a little wire that used to look like a cotter pin, and we just push the pin out. The pedal will be free now. 5/8 nylon nut. We'll just zip it off. And then our brake pedal will slide out. We don't have to take it off, but that gives us enough room to get this out. All right, so we've got a new one. Important, please read. Master cylinder has been factory tested and certified operational. Please refer to your service manual for proper brake bleeding. Brake bleeding is tricky due to the curves and loops some brake lines have. We recommend an easy bleeder kit. It is reasonably priced. So they say. Ooh-wee. Look at this brand new thing. Ooh, now. Well, I'll tell you what, get this turned the right way. We'll go ahead and slide this on the stud. I'm going to slide this in just for now. And I'll get a new cotter pin to go in this pin. And we'll get our brake pedal back on. Then we'll get our line back on with some new brass washers. Fill it with fluid and see if that did the trick. Okay, so we'll slide our brake pedal back up in there. And then usually you have to kind of hold your mouth just right. Then you'll move your pedal and line it up. And we'll drop our new cotter pin in. And we can just use our fingers to spread that out. back down. It is a nylon nut, so that's good. All right, let me grab some brass washers. We'll throw this back in, throw some fluid in it. It's always handy to keep a set of these brass washers around because they just are handy to have, and most kits don't come with them. And I don't want to gun this bolt on because this bolt is hollow, kind of like breather bolts. Fluid goes through the middle of the bolt, so you don't want to over torque these. They will snap. So just snug. Run our lines back out here. We'll run our bolt back in. We'll run our nylon nuts back on. Okay. Now we can pop the cap off, fill it with some fluid. Now let's see if we can get a little bit of, it feels better already. I think that plunger was our problem. It's actually bubbling a lot better too. Now look for leaks down here. I can feel the pedal getting a little stiffer already. Now if you're going to bleed them this way, where they self-bleed, it takes a lot of time, but also don't slam down on your pedal. Okay, you'll bust that plunger seal out, blow it out, then you're back to square one. So the bubbles have gotten less, brake pedal's getting tighter, still not squirting up like I'd like to see it, so we still got air in the system. If you didn't have any air, when you push your brake pedal down, you'd see it shoot up. Instead of air coming up, it'd be shooting fluid back up. I'm going to raise this back tire up just to see if it's actually grabbing any at all. Not yet. But it is getting stiffer, so that's good. I think it's actually starting to grab a little now, which is good. Move this out of the way and check for any leaks. Now if you're doing this and air bubbles stop, but your brakes still aren't catching really well in the back, walk away for 10 minutes and come back. Sometimes that air will work its way up. Again, these are designed to self-bleed, and that is exactly what it's doing. The rear is starting to drag a little, so that's good. All right, well, I finally just gave up on self-bleeding idea. Got the brake bleeder out, and boy, she's stiff as a board now. Now you can't go, oh, it grabs instantly almost. Oh yeah. Very good. No more bubbles, and back here is nice and clean, and I chased the line all the way around and there's no drips in it. So this master cylinder was indeed our problem. And now I'll try to spin the wheel. Spins free. Now the brake. Yes, sir. So there we go. We have successfully fixed the rear brake issue. So you and I are working together pretty good in the shop. Did a lot to this bike. We changed the front fork seals and oil on the first video. We went to change the starter and found out that the basket was all just toast, and so we changed that out, put the new starter in, new jack shaft, new brakes. So I would say that you and I did a good job. All that's left is take it down the road, make sure everything works well, and send it on to the customer. Now I will be putting a new battery in tomorrow, but if you don't know how to put a battery in, just Google it. So thank you Thank you. And tell your mama now, I said hi.